God, you know my every thought, and you know my ways, the path on which I walk, and you know me better than I know myself, and you've known me longer than anyone else. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. Oh, I could walk where men may never tread, or plunge the depths where I could make my bed, but I never went hide and seek. You're so good at finding me, only lost in the mystery of the depth of your love for me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Oh, and I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. And even where my world is shaking, Lord, your hand will hold me still. Even where my world is shaking, your hand will hold me still. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
After this manner, therefore, pray ye. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power of glory forever. Amen. Matthew 6:9-13.
Built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of seems to hide His face. I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. My anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When He shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, faultless stand before the throne.
All right, prayer. All earthly things with earth will fade away, but prayer grasps eternity. But I'm convinced of this: God does not hear prayer. He hears desperate prayer. Prayer is not a position, whether you kneel. Prayer is not a position, it's a disposition. You get to the place where you'd rather sweat, you'd rather weep in His presence than laugh in anybody else's presence. You'd rather God whisper a secret into your heart that breaks you than somebody give you the prizes that all the world covets. Prayer is almost the greatest human privilege that we have.
Hey, good morning, and thanks for joining us in our online worship service here today. If we need a time to gather together, it is now. And so I'm so thankful that you have taken the time to set aside and to worship. It's an incredible opportunity for us to still utilize technology to connect. And so thank you. And I want to talk to you today about prayer. I saw an article online this week about how in the month of March, when this whole COVID-19 thing started to pop off, prayer in Google searches just skyrocketed. People wanted to connect and know more about prayer. And so I thought, what better opportunity for us here today to talk about prayer, and specifically about the example that Jesus Christ Himself gave to us in what is the Lord's Prayer. In times of crisis, in times of trouble, that seems to be when prayer kind of starts, having a bigger impact in our life. And it's unfortunate because it's such a powerful piece of our Christian tenet that we seem to just not do well, or we're not comfortable doing it, or we don't know how to. And so, too often we fail at just utilizing it. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today: prayer, and specifically the Lord's Prayer. And we find in Matthew 6 here, we see in verse number 9, this is given to us from Jesus Christ Himself. He says, "After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen." Now this prayer is given to us, and it's given to us in this fascinating breakdown, because if you really look at it, it's really separated into six petitions that Christ gives us. And about half of those petitions are specifically about God and who He is. And the other half is more about how it relates to us and the things that are necessary for our salvation. And what is fascinating about the Lord's Prayer, we see this in often, we probably know it by heart already because we've said it a lot, whether in services or at dinner tables. Just a few verses before, Christ gives this prayer as an example that we're not supposed to be doing prayers in repetition or vain thought, or without much thought, right? And it's ironic that that's somehow become somewhat of the Lord's Prayer, and so unfortunate, because it's a beautiful prayer given to us as an example for how we are to pray. And it's a beautiful prayer just in and of itself. And so I want to break this down. Because I believe that this signifies that our prayer should be equal in our worship to God, as well as the needs and how they relate to us. So often the case I've seen in many prayers is that they're pretty kind of, they're a little bit self-centered, a little bit more us-focused. And what I find fascinating about this is in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus elevates and kind of spreads out the relationship that God has and who He is first. And I think that's an important, critical piece that can be missing in a lot of people's prayer lives is how and who God is. So, the first part here, our Father who art in heaven. The very beginning, our Father. When we're talking to someone, it's important to know who we're talking to. So when we think of our Father, whenever we engage in prayer, these are the two things that should be considered. God being our Father, how He loves us, and then who art in heaven, how He just has power and dominion over so much. And I'll explain that a little bit more here in a minute. But first I want to think about our Father. Our God is our Father. And not only is He our Father, He is a good Father. You know, like the song, it's who you are, right? It's who you are. It's a good Father. He's willing to receive us graciously, and He's ready to listen to our prayers. He wants to connect to us. He wants to know what is on your mind, what is on your heart. I want to know who you are. And in a word, that of Himself, He disposes to us, Father. The second part of this is who art in heaven. Again, this isn't so much identifying where He is. It's more identifying His power and the relationship of that power, so more than His location. So the meaning is that all things are subject to His dominion. And that the world and everything in it is held by His hand. His power is everything diffused across all of it. And that all things are arranged by His providence. 2 Chronicles, it talks about the heavens do not contain Him. So it's not so much about where He is, it's a little bit more about what He can do. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed, it's a big fancy word, right? Big fancy word. It just means sanctified, holy, set apart. And it is an advantage to us that God reigns and that He receives honor which is due Him. He's the only one that fills this role. He is sanctified, He's holy, He's set apart to do this for us. To sanctify the name of God, to set it apart and recognize who He is and what He's able to do. That is giving glory to His name. It's the opposite of profaning His name, because we remember just how set apart He is. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So what is God's kingdom? What is God's kingdom? God's kingdom is experienced, I see, when people voluntarily subject themselves to His will. So when we think of a kingdom, we know that in order to have a kingdom, there has to be a ruler. And in order for there to be a ruler, there has to be subjects to rule. And so for God's kingdom, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, those are connected on earth as it is in heaven. In this prayer, we're asking that He may remove all hindrances and may bring all men under His dominion and may lead them to meditate on the heavenly life, denying selfish desires, telling others about Christ and His love, allowing God to reign in one's life, allow Him to achieve victory over flesh and Satan, allowing questions in our life to be answered by His will, which kind of brings us to that next part of that phrase, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So what is the will of God, and how do we know it's accomplished? I think that this question alone is something that we will continually wrestle with our whole lives. God, what is your will? What am I supposed to do in this situation? What am I supposed to take this position, or are we supposed to have more kids? Are we supposed to, am I supposed to, marry this person? What is your will for me in my life? These big decision aspects that we think of in terms of God having His will in our life. But the one thing I kind of want to bring out in this is that God's will for us is something that is achieved in the day-to-day. It's something when we connect ourselves to Him in His kingdom, in having His rule over us in the daily decisions that we can make. Because it's not so much just the important decisions that God's will is accomplished. It's those day-to-day things, those little moments that have so much of an impact. From being a parent and how to handle kids, we know that it's more about the example that we set for them. Whether that's a leader in a position that you have at work, again, it's about the example and the day-to-day things that people see you do. That is where God's will and His kingdom is come in that moment. When we subject ourselves to His will and to His rule and reign, and we make those decisions based off of what He would want us to do and not so much about what we want out of that moment. So that is the first half of the prayer. You can see where it really changes the perspective. Instead of us coming to God with our list of our grocery list of items that we want Him to do, we can see who He is first. Remember and recognize that we are entering the holiest of holy places in our prayer life. It's amazing. And not only that, we see Him as a Father, someone who we have a relationship with, a close relationship with, who loves us. It's a beautiful start to any prayer. The second part begins talking a little bit about us, talking a little bit about what we're looking for in life itself. It says, give us this day our daily bread. This begins the second half of the prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. It's interesting, right? I always found this passage extremely interesting in that, give us this day our daily bread. Why? Why daily bread? I believe that this is really talking about more the first part to be simply about daily survival. What is the most basic necessities that we need in our life? God, we ask that you give those to us so that we can continue doing your will. I don't care about other pleasures. I just want to survive the next day so that I can continue worshiping you. That's where I believe that our daily bread, just give me what I need so I can continue to do your will. That's why it's connected right after that passage. It reminds us of just how necessary God is in our life for our survival. The very breath that we breathe is given because He allows it. And often we think that there's so much in our life that we control. And that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. Sometimes we get too concerned that we feel like the weight and pressure of the decisions that we have to make and the things that we have to do is that it's only on our shoulders. It's a good reminder that we're just asking for God to just keep us alive, keep us surviving so that we can continue to worship Him and He'll take care of the rest. The next part, give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. It's often, or sometimes, translated, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. They both mean the same thing. This is probably the most difficult part of the passage or of this prayer to accept, even though it should be the easiest. We're commanded to ask the prayer for obtaining the forgiveness of sins. And as Christians, we will grab a hold of this concept and be like, wow, I have sinned in my life. I have messed up. I've made mistakes. And then God comes in and forgives all of it and washes it white as snow. And Jesus imparts His righteousness into and covers me. Wow, we get so excited about that. And then we will often get stuck and shackle ourselves back into the past of our past mistakes and launch into this self-deprecating behavior of who we are, who we think we are. And I believe it is an illustration. I look at it in this way. It's as if someone has come into your life and say you had this incredible student loan that was just insurmountable. And someone comes into your life and says, hey, I will pay for all of that. I will cover all of that payment. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And you're so excited. You're so thankful that debt has been paid. And the next month rolls around and you're still trying to pay on that debt. That's what we do when we continue to get stuck in our own past mistakes and behaviors in life. We get stuck thinking about things that no longer matter. It's been forgiven. And we can take sometimes those sins and impart and reflect of who we are. Oh, I'm a sinner. I've made these mistakes. I can't get past them. God has already taken care of it. He's already forgiven you of them. It's time to move on and do something beautiful and great in your life. And part of that beautiful and greatness that you can do in your life is forgiving others, knowing that Christ has forgiven you. That's hard to do. You know, sometimes there's people in our lives that are hard to forgive. Don't act all pious and be like, oh, I can't think of anyone. There might have been someone who popped in your head when I said, hey, think of someone who is difficult to forgive. Recently, we've probably spent a lot of time with our family members stuck at home, and they might be someone who you might be thinking about as someone difficult to forgive right now. But I want to encourage you, there's someone in your life who needs some forgiveness. And you have been forgiven so much from Christ. And when we put our perspective on that first, forgive us our trespasses or forgive us our debts as we forgive those who trespass against us. When we connect those two, we can see, oh, this isn't me just forgiving other people and moving on. This is me pouring out. So much forgiveness has been poured into my life. This is me overflowing with forgiveness into others. And so the last part here, and lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And lead us not into temptation. So the meaning is we're conscious here of our own weaknesses, and we desire to enjoy the protection of God, that we may remain impregnable against the assaults of Satan. The word temptation here is generally any kind of trial. It doesn't necessarily have to have the negative connotation that we often will think of. We see in Genesis 22, God is said to have tempted Abraham when he tried his faith. So when we're tempted both in adversity, we can be tempted in both adversity and prosperity. So when we think of adversity, this is where we often think of temptation, right? It's often when we think of a trial or something that we have to overcome in our life. This could be a health, just right now going through quarantine, money issues, just life, kind of bringing you down kind of thing. That's where we often think of temptation. It's definitely found in that. But I also want to encourage you to think about the idea of temptation that is found in prosperity. And as we kind of think back, and we often don't think of the things that we miss until it's taken from us, but when we think of prosperity, those are things that can become a temptation in and of itself, whether that's comfort, laziness, apathy, contentment. Those things are temptations and trials that you are called to overcome. And so whatever period of life that you may be going through right now that would describe something along that lines, all of them are given as a trial and test that you have yet to pass. And so our prayer should be that whatever is going on in my life right now, God, deliver me from evil. Let me bring you glory through this temptation, through this trial. Don't allow my situation to move my focus off of what I need to be focused on. For thine is the kingdom. This last part here, for thine is the kingdom. I love that this ties from this moment, from the very end, all the way back to the beginning. This last clause agrees so well with the rest of this prayer. To teach us that our prayers, which are here dictated to us, are founded on God alone, that we may not rely on our own merits, because it's not about what we do. It's so much about what God can do through us. And so if we think about what all God owns in his kingdom, in heaven and earth, it's all his. And that includes you, and that includes me. And this type of prayer really turns into true power. when we are tuned to God's will, because we're not only doing God's will, but we are God's will. So over this next week, 7 days in a week, right? I'll give a day of rest. We have 6 passages here, 6 clauses or ideas to focus on a phrase each day. Really meditate and focus on one passage and what that means to you. I want to encourage you to do this because I believe that prayer is such an important part of our Christian faith, regardless of what's going on, of all the situations right now. But this is something that could revitalize your prayer life. And if you're someone that's trying to seek out some power in your prayer, here's a perfect example of where to start. We see this again in the example of Christ, who we are called to follow, who we are called to be, who we are called to example. In his prayer of Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. To kind of close out our services here, I've been meditating and kind of this song has been really hitting me this week, I feel. It talks about, it's the goodness of God. It's by Bethel Music. And I just wanted to kind of share this with you, if you would be so inclined. And kind of just think about the song or the words in the song, because a lot of songs kind of talk about how we feel or what we need from God. I feel like this is such a great worship song because it mostly focuses on who God is and the goodness that he provides to us, even in times when we might not understand exactly where he is or what he's doing. So the goodness of God. I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. goodness is running after me. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Thanks for joining us. May the Lord bless you and keep you this week. I love you. Take care.